Let it connect up, because it always takes a couple minutes to... All right, we're up and at 'em. Let's wait for people to show up. Somebody's on there. Somebody else is on there. People are showing up. Hi. We have an excellent connection. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I was having back issues for the last couple days, but today my back is feeling better, thank goodness. So thank you for asking. And we have sun today. So yay. Sunshine. I love it. How are you doing? How are things where you are, Jaleesa? I'm waiting for things to catch up. Okay, so while we're waiting for people to show up, I guess I should start answering the question that somebody sent in. Good here. I live in Dallas, so we are recovering from the big snowstorm. Oh my. I hope you have power back and everything else then. That was horrible. I'm so sorry you went through that. And I'm glad that you're recovering from the weather event. That was one heck of a weather event. So someone wrote in and was wondering about what to expect if they visit energy vortex areas. And Sedona, Arizona, I guess, is where they're planning on going. So that'll be interesting to see. I've not been there, so I don't know from personal experience what it's like. If any of you have been there, you can always chime in and you know, as we continue on with the show and let her know. If I change color, that's because Ian is walking around the room and getting in front of the lights. Yeah. But anyway, when I experienced the different power spots that I've been at, I'm not sure if they would be considered vortexes so much. I'm not sure what the definition of vortex is exactly. So if it's a power spot, like one of those places on the earth where there's more energy, sort of like major acupuncture points on the planet kind of thing, where more energy streams through, of which I've experienced a number, then the one thing to remember, particularly if you're going into an area that's known to have them, is that what you bring with you is going to be amplified. So check in with yourself, your thoughts, fears, expectations, all of that. And if there's something that, if it was increased and, you know, if it was amplified, could cause you trouble, then see what you can do about, you know, taking care of that before. Hi, Taylor. Before you go, and just be aware of it when you're there. Certainly, different power centers have got different effects. The one up in Saskatchewan was a pretty powerful one because it was an ancient site that had been used on a regular basis for probably a few thousand years, and so it has a buildup of expectations and energy and so forth that are accumulated from the people walking up the hill and adding their stones to the pile in the center. Medicine wheels are somewhat different than just, you know, a standard kind of power spot. The one that Ian and I were at in the cabin that we rented 3 years in a row, I think it was, that one was in a public place, and so we had that issue of it amplifying the thoughts of people who had stayed there before us, in some cases not positive thoughts, and having to clear that out and having to work with the energy when we were there in order to clean the psychic space. And then it really affected our own ability to see things and encounter things, awakening different senses, vision. My clairvoyant abilities were severely amplified when we were there. And Ian also had a lot of those types of experiences as well, where he saw some pretty amazing images and things in trees and so forth. So in a place like Sedona, where a lot of people are going with different expectations, I'm not sure exactly what the potential. Hi, Marina. Hi, Marina. I'm not sure exactly what the potential would be for that type of thing. So just, be on the lookout for that and do a lot of check-ins with yourself. Fantasy kind of stuff can go run amok, I think, in a place like that. You also might physically expect like changes in how you're feeling. You could get dizzy or disoriented if you walk into an energy vortex, feel ungrounded. Sometimes people experience a feeling of heaviness. It's difficult to walk as you approach one. That can often tell you that there's one nearby. Violet says, hello, do you have any? Yes, today was sunny. I have a much lovely day here after the ice storm. Good. And we're really happy here to see the sun as well. Taylor says, are there ways to tell if a spirit visited your dream, or is it more like intuition? And Michelle says, hello. Hello, Michelle. That is a product of experience. The more clear you are inside of yourself, and the more you know your own energy, the easier it is for you to tell if something you encounter either in a dream state or in waking reality is other than you. And that's the only way that I know of to do that. You really have to know yourself. You got to know your own feelings, your own energy, your own thought processes to be able to tell if it's just something sort of reflecting that back at you, so that it's just a part of yourself, or if it's an independent energy from your own. So that's experience.
Yeah. And over time, it'll get easier and easier to tell as you learn.
Yep. So Fatima says, hi, hope you're well. Yes, I am. I'm feeling pretty good. Marisol says, yay, I got here on time. Yes, hello. Violet says, me too, on time, yay. Canary says, do you have a take on lucid nightmares? What causes them? Well, lucid nightmares, lucid dreaming, by definition, means that you can control what's going on in the dream. So if it's a nightmare and you aren't able to control it, then there's something else going on. There's a lot of native cultures working with the nightmare element, like the creature or whatever it is that's trying to block your path or chase you down. The tactic that you use in a dream like that, especially if it's lucid, is confronting the being and taking control of it. And that is a way of integrating your power in the lucid dream state. So it depends on what it is. Apparently I'm getting nice and warm now.
Good.
Yeah, we might as well. So what causes them, your subconscious mind is attempting to communicate to you. The subconscious is like the mind of the heart, feelings, and nightmares in general are there as warnings and often happen if you're not paying attention to your regular dreams. And it's a message that your subconscious thinks is important to get there. Most people don't have nightmares just because, it's like there's a reason for having them. So with that in mind, understanding what exactly the nightmare is trying to tell you usually stops the reason for the nightmare. Whether it's an experience that you've had that you're trying to process, a warning about some danger in your life that you haven't been consciously aware of, like if the person that's in the dream itself is representing an actual person in your life and is treating you in a negative way, you might want to look at the relationship that you have with them. So, it's like it's your own internal message system. So that's what I have on that. Taylor said, thank you, very helpful about the other subject we were talking about a minute ago. Rosie says, hello. Canary sends a heart with a sunshine in it, I think. Teresa says, hi there. Hi, Teresa. Violet says, will you show us the beautiful staff behind you? Yes, my staff wanted to come today. And so, let me see where this ends up, since it's a slightly slower process that I'm going through. Yep, that works pretty good. So this is my staff, and it is its own being, I guess. It represents my experience. Everything on it has something to do with an experience that I've had. So it all relates. It's sort of like my calling card to the spirit realm. They see me coming with the staff. They have an idea of who I am, what I'm about, what I can do, how they should treat me, potentially, with some mutual respect there. Thank you, Marina. Yes. Ryder. Hi, Ryder. Good evening, all, and hello. Yes. So Jaleesa says, when you use wands with crystals, I'm assuming there's more. I do use wands with crystals. This is a staff, though, which is somewhat different. Do you hold it by the crystal part? Usually not. I usually hold it by the wood. Although I sometimes use the energy and hold the crystal for getting an impression or an energetic read from my wand. Sometimes I use the crystal end on myself, like if I'm working on my third eye or my throat chakra or my crown chakra, or some other body part. If I'm doing a healing with the wand, then I'll put it on me. But usually I'm not holding it by that end and pointing the wooden part. I do have one wand that has crystals at two ends, and I hold it in the middle, and each end of the wand has got a different energy coming out of it. So generally speaking, crystals sort of they gather the energy together and aim it, or make it more, solidifies the wrong word, but what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it. Intense, whatever. It'll come at some point. But that's the whole notion of it, is that a wand allows you to direct energy somewhere, and if you're going to use it as a wand, then you want it to build up that power in the wand itself. That's why I charge my wands at different times of the month, or different times of the week, or different times of the year, depending on what they are, because I have a lot of them at this point. Yeah, so I guess that answers that question. So Violet says, where did you find the claw, talon? I made it. This is copper wire. So I actually wound copper wire around to make the claws, because this large piece of amber kept falling off, and I had to find a way to secure it, because I really wanted that round top. Ian's staff has got a large crystal with a point on it, and mine's got a round ball, and trying to figure out how to do that. And I ended up having to change the stem part here. I actually got some brass pieces of metal and made this on the bottom so that it's more stable, because the last version I had of the claw, since copper is so soft, it started wiggling, going like this, and then kind of getting cockeyed, and that just didn't seem right. staff wasn't too fond of it, so I had to take it all apart and redo that section and then add everything back on. So that's how I did that. That's all. And then I put a 10-pointed star at the top. Or is it, no, 1, 2, 3, it's a 5-pointed star. Before I had a 10-pointed one, but this time I just kept it with a pentagram to attach each of the claws above it to make like a cage for the crystal, or the amber piece, which is not technically a crystal, it's a resin, a hardened resin. Yeah, so that would be that, as far as that goes. So Jaleesa says, I have a wand with crystals and copper wire and hold it both ways, but I'm not sure what's better, so thank you. Well, it just depends on what you're using it for, so, you know, it's your wand. That's just how I use my wands. But, you know, I'd never made a two-ended one before. Usually they've been like the handle and a wrapping around the handle, and then the crystals were at the other end of the piece of wood that I was using. So that was interesting. And it's my Venusian wand, and I have a green garnet on one end and a red garnet on the other. And I have some emeralds and rose quartz in there, and a cryoprase. And the red garnet is like for emotional kind of healing, and the green garnet is for physical healing. So yeah, it was a surprise. If you're building a good magical tool, it sort of teaches you things about it as you go. At least it does for me. Like, I learn about either the planetary influences I'm starting to work with, because I have to look up associations and learn about it, and you know, start working with the materials that it gives me, or you know, the energetic nature of the spirit of the wood. I mean, it's just sort of a combination of things. Thank you, Jaleesa. Violet says, I was just fashioning my own staff with glorious pieces that make it so special, so fun. It took on a new meaning with magic in my life. Yeah, and it is. It's like the tools that we can make ourselves take on a very special place in, you know, in our relationship with the forces that we're learning how to work with. So there's no doubt about that. So that's my staff. It's changed over the years. It's always liked public display. I mean, I've taken it to the medicine wheel weekends that I went 4 years in a row, taken it to pagan celebrations. You know, it likes to go with me. It helped me find the right ritual on the harmonic convergence when I was in Hawaii. It likes to be acknowledged and recognized by people. It really doesn't like it when someone calls it a walking stick, which happens. And it's kind of interesting because, you know, it definitely has a feel about it. And I once met a staff that was very, very angry because the person who had been gifted the staff was trying to sell it. And that was interesting because, you know, it's like they can have a definite personality. And I was wandering around in a flea market, the biggest one in Santa Cruz, and felt this wave of energy coming from ahead of me. And it's just like really mad. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And I'm following the energy along, and there's this guy with a staff, and I realize it's coming from the staff, and I just couldn't help myself and said, are you selling that staff? And he goes like, yeah. You want to buy it? I said, what's wrong with you? You can't sell that staff. You can give it away, but you can't sell it. He got very angry with me and chewed me out and said he could do whatever he wanted with it because it was his. And I thought I was probably not the first or the last person that day that came up and told him exactly the same thing. And he really wasn't paying attention, apparently. So that was an entertaining moment with how my father was wrong. Inanimate objects can have independent energy and thought, and you can like them. Do you have bells on the staff? Yes, I do. There is this bell here, and this bell is a Japanese temple bell that my friend found in the jungle of Indonesia on her way to a temple. And she saw it in the path and she picked it up and she brought it and home and gave it to me. So that's its significance. And then I have another bell here, and this is a Tibetan bell that was found in a 2nd century Roman site, and it is a time anomaly. The archaeologists can't understand how this group of bells, at least that's what they said, got in that location. So for me, this represents the fact that time is fluid and, not completely straight in a straight line. So Michelle says, speaking of crystals, what do you think about synthetic ones like opaline? I am having second thoughts about crystals because of the way they're mined, the social and environmental impact. I'm not sure what I think about that. And yeah, I understand your concerns about how they're mined and then the energy that some of them can have because of how they're mined. I've encountered that myself. And it depends on how synthetic they are, maybe. I mean, something that's natural, that grows in the earth, is going to have a different energy than something that's grown in a lab, because it's going to have history through time, through the process that it went through in order to get there. But energetically, if they're identical, like a synthetic diamond and so forth, and it's got the same molecular structure, then there's certainly the possibility that it could connect energetically with other of its kind, as it were, with the same signature of energy. So I don't know. It's one of those things that you have to experiment with and see what works for you. Because like I said, it's definitely, something that has been pressed and grown and so forth in the earth is got to have a different kind of energy than something that's just been made in a lab. But it's like a terrible thing that's going on. It's become such a huge industry. Everybody wants to have crystals and, the forced labor and industry and stuff like that, where they're making lots and lots of money from it. Not really any different from the diamond industry, especially in its beginnings. So it's sort of like the new blood diamond, I guess. So Violet says it likes display. Yes. So Jaleesa says, yes, I always think it's a good idea to interview your new magical tools to see what they like and how they feel. Yeah, because if you get the wrong one, that could be not so good. I mean, other people people that aren't into this will probably think we're all crazy, thinking we're talking to items and objects and, and that they tell us what they like and what they don't like. But, I mean, to someone like me, they seem pretty clear. I have my dragon bracelet, only likes being on my right arm facing me. It's like it won't let me put it anywhere else. It's like I'll try it on the other arm in a different direction, and there's this, no, no, don't do it. This doesn't feel right. And so then I have to switch it anyway, so I gave up. It was sort of a test I was doing just to see exactly what would happen. But, yeah, when I see things in Goodwill and other discount stores and flea markets and things like that, you're always taking a bit of a chance when you buy something that's used. But if you're sensitive enough and you can feel the energy at the start, then you know whether it's probably a good idea to do it. And if you make a mistake, then you can ground it out or do whatever you need. So I think it's interesting. Someone was asking me the other day about grounding exercises, and it's like the whole earthing thing has become like a new thing, where people are running around taking their shoes off and walking on the earth and exchanging ions and so forth with the planet and healing and stuff like that. And a bunch of the massage therapists I know are like starting to do that. We were in a class now a couple years ago, and we're talking about it, and I'm saying, well, I've done that my entire life. I'm not sure why this is a new thing. And I mentioned the word grounding, and they don't know what that means. So I thought that was interesting. So I think it's good that, people are finding new ways or different ways to connect with the earth, because I'm totally in favor of that. But I find it hysterically funny that they think that they just discovered something no one has found out about before. So Desideradum says, I love your hairstyle today. Thank you very much. I decided wear it on the side today. It's like, why not? I had a fun conversation with my daughter's anesthesiologist on Wednesday where they were commenting on my hair. I guess his son had purple hair for a while and he went surfing in Hawaii and his purple hair went away really quickly. So salt water, not so good for hair. At least that's the message I got. He was delightful though, so that was kind of nice. It's nice when you can have just a, casual, pleasant conversation with someone in the medical community. But anyway, I was on my daughter's ride, so that's why I was there. I wasn't there for me. They have this thing, if they put you under, you got to get a ride home. Can't drive yourself. So how was your all's full moon? I had a hard time sleeping the first night of the full moon. It kept me awake. I kept seeing through my eyelids, and it was quite annoying. I was very annoyed. I was like, having my eyes closed isn't helping. Why? Does anyone else out there have that issue where you see through your eyelids? I'm not sure if we talked about that specifically. Because I'm curious. Prehistoric Matt says yellow. So I think that's another way to say hello. So, curious. I'm asking, how many of you do you have that where you see through your eyelids and when the lights are off, or see a light inside your head? I have that too. Ian and I were realizing a few years ago that we had a light inside of our head, and then we thought, is that really a light? and then it turned off, and then we went, oh, that really was a light, because now it's not there. So Desideradum says, hope you don't mind that I bring it up again, but let's come back here. Apparently I asked a good question. But I'd love to learn more about chamomile fluid condenser, where you use it, how you use it, etc. You can put it on a piece of paper. You can use it as a solid. It doesn't have to be liquid. You can crunch up the chamomile flowers and put them in something, I'm assuming.
Like a sponge, like energy sponge.
And what it does is it absorbs whatever energy you put into it and then keeps it there. So it's like Ian said, an energy sponge. It's a way to keep a charge longer, especially in the beginning when you're not sure that you're actually charging something up. It can help with that. But I've used that on a lot of different stuff. It's like you can turn a card into a magical guard or whatever for your space. I have one in my office. It's the back of an angel, and I hang it over the door of my office. So when people walk through the door, it helps them to leave the rest of the world behind and enter into a new space to help with their healing, and hopefully takes off some of their larvae or thought forms or whatever, so that they're clearer and they're ready to, feel better. So it'll take whatever charge you give it. It's sort of like a universal type of condenser when it comes to that. And each element can have its own specific condenser, but if you don't want to have to learn a whole bunch of them, then it's nice to have a universal one. So Violet says, I walked outside to look at it and was lovely. I keep practicing on the eyelids. She looked at the moon. Cool. Delisa says, yes, sometimes I see through my eyelids and it makes me think I'm crazy. Well, I often touch my eyes to make sure that they're actually closed, because I'm not convinced, because I can see too well. Ryder says, full moon this month was amazing, big and bright, clear skies. I slept in the living room on the floor with the curtains open, basking in the moonlight. So Stella says, yes, so that must be you see through your eyelids. All right. Teresa says, yes, so annoying. All right. Trinity T says, yes, I have experienced that. I saw a gargoyle. It took me a while to figure out what it was. Yeah, they can be kind of a surprise, can't they? Emily says, yes. All right, awesome. So what I'm getting is I'm not the only one, which is always nice to know. Prehistoric Matt says, someone invisible called my name while I was on the couch. That was nice since I was waiting for someone to come fix my heater. And I was so glad they finally came, but not. Just a disembodied voice. Yeah, they're kind of funny that way sometimes. Michelle says, I find it very annoying trying to sleep and funny colors and shapes keep jumping in front of my closed eyelids. I love that. I mean, that's my favorite part when I get the colors and stuff, and if they get just the right combination of color and movement and stuff, then I'm like, wow, look at that, and then it starts to move and transform, and sometimes it leads to visions of things, which is way cool, but I love the colors. They're fun. So it does make it hard to sleep, though. You can't sleep with the colors. Luciano Pavarotti says, what's your opinion on Western occult figures such as Crowley, Blavatsky, etc.? Well, they're different. Crowley and Blavatsky are completely different types of attitudes towards magic. Blavatsky is a racist and was into eugenics and was actually the inspiration for Hitler and the United States when we got into the eugenics program here, categorizing people who were blonde and blue-eyed as being more evolved humans, which fed into that whole notion that, you know, there are some people that are intrinsically better and more evolved than other people, which is just stupid. So I really don't care for her at all. And for that attitude. Crowley is his own person. He was a bit of a misogynist and sometimes a bit of an ass, but he certainly did inspire with his rituals and stuff like that, and the Golden Dawn that he was a part of in the beginning that then later collapsed and then was reformed, etc., was certainly influenced by him a great deal. For me, the Western occultism has got too much Christian imagery implicit throughout it. It's like it's just sort of an automatic assumption that all that stuff is something that you need to have. And I was trying to get away from all that personally because I was reprogramming my own brain and I wanted to get rid of all the bad part of the Christian stuff, which, you know, made me think I was evil and there was something wrong with me because I was a woman and so forth. So my impression of that stuff is going to be colored by the fact that I'm female in a society where women were considered and still are considered not as good as men. And a lot of times men don't understand that because they're not experiencing it. But, you know, we're more attuned to some of those subtle vibes. I don't know exactly what to call all that stuff, but so I personally wasn't all that interested in the ceremonial stuff as a general rule, although I've incorporated a lot of it into my own form of my own pagan path with the, you know, casting of a circle, the working with the planes and all this other stuff. So there's a lot of stuff you can learn from these people, but they're not necessarily, you know, they're a product of their time and their environment. And the things that were working around them when they came on the scene. And so, like with any of us who share our experiences, it's up to you as an individual to decide what is the right path for you. So that's sort of my general take. My husband approved of my answer. So Desideratum says, I fall asleep so fast I don't have a chance to see anything through my eyelids. Well, good for you. I'm so glad. It's nice to be able to fall asleep. Jonathan says, only see through, whoops, it went up. I gotta go back. My finger went, here we are. Only see through my eyelids when I sleep with a piece of lapis lazuli in my hand. Lapis is good for that kind of thing. Delisa says, do you have any tips for herbs? I have never used herbs very much in my practice, but recently I have tried to incorporate more. What else can you do other than anointing things with them? Well, you can, make pouches out of them, and you can make oils out of them. Well, that would be for anointing things. You can make sprays out of them for cleansing. I got some vodka and I had 4 large bottles that I picked up, well, not of the vodka, but empty bottles, like at Goodwill kind of places or what have you. And then I would fill it up part way with the vodka and then add the herbs. So I made 4 sort of alcohol tinctures, rosemary, lavender, sage, and what was the 4th one I did? I have to think about that. I don't think it might have been mint. I'll have to look and see what the 4th one I did, but the other 3 are pretty common as far as practice goes. And a lot of herbs attract certain kinds of energies. So lavender is one that is for calming and relaxing and that kind of thing. You can check into aromatherapy stuff. It'll give you a good idea of what actual magical uses there can be for herbs and plants. And then, like, if I'm doing a poppet, either for healing for someone or for a protection kind of thing or a binding spell, I'll often stuff that with different herbs, and rosemary and sage are the 2 that I use most commonly in stuffing a poppet, because rosemary is just a very traditional one for protection, and so is sage, for keeping negative energy away and that kind of stuff. So yeah, you get into herbs for magical purposes, and there's definitely a lot. It's a big field for things that you can do. We did one video recently, which was a protective sachet that had some herbs in it. I did dream pillows. I made dream pillows, creating my own formulas for 3 different kinds of dream pillows that I put together, using the magical associations of the plants and the herbs. You can use them in cooking. Kitchen witches are famous for, using their plants and their food and stuff like that to try and affect somebody's mood or their health or what have you. So, yeah, things to hang on your door, different times of the year. There's a lot of magical uses for various plants. Cedar is a big one for getting rid of negative death energy in a house by boiling cedar boughs and letting the steam go through the house in order to settle any energy that might be there. So if there's like an open portal from somebody dying or a spirit that's wandering around and isn't supposed to, hasn't been able to pass over, that can help just release that kind of energy, or just the energy of death itself. Because up north where I learned that, they definitely would never, the natives don't like ghosts. They don't want to have them around. So no house that had a death in it would be moved into until someone had come in and cleansed it all. So plants are really important for that kind of use. So it all depends on what you get interested in. Trini says, at Michelle, I see colors too. Stella says, and see a light. Yes. The light is interesting, isn't it? Catherine says, I've had to touch my eyelids. I've had to touch my eyelids. Yeah, I hate that though. It's like, it is annoying to have to go like that okay, it's like I can still see, but I'm not poking my eyeball. Okay, fine. I guess it's really closed. So, Violet says, I'm going to add vinegar to the witch's bottle. Any other ingredients in the house that I might have on hand that you can think of offhand? Well, I when I did the video on the witch's bottle, I gave you an entire formula for 4 thieves vinegar, and I recommend making that. And then you can have that for the rest of time, because all you have to do at that point is add more vinegar to it as you use it. So I would watch that. And if it's not clear what the ingredients are, let me know, and I'll post it somewhere, the list of potential ingredients. But a 4 thieves vinegar thing for the witch's bottle is just the perfect kind of vinegar to use. You can use wine instead, but hey, why not make a more potent vinegar? And then some people use it in cooking. I don't think I would because I'm not fond of really super hot stuff, and I did put some hot stuff in that vinegar.
Doesn't it also include like some rest?
Well, that's in the witch's bottle, not in the
Oh,
vinegar.
that's not in the vinegar.
Right, at least not in the recipe that I used. I don't know if there might be other recipes out there. That's always possible. So Desideratum says, how do you clear items that you've brought back from the thrift store? Well, that depends on what the energy of the item is. If it is just sort of a mild kind of energy, like a statue, I've bought a lot of angel statues and god and goddess statues, and a lot of times just having them and using them and holding them is sort of a natural way of claiming them. So I make them mine, and it's not like an energy I need to get rid of. Ian had a book once that he bought that he actually had to burn because the energy attached to it was.
Couldn't get rid of it.
Yeah, he tried banishing it and burying it and doing all kinds of stuff. Whoever had that book before him had some pretty seriously negative energy.
It was the book of black magic and pacts.
Okay, it was a book of black magic and pacts, so that could explain why. We're willing to read anything, but we don't necessarily want to do everything we read. So but
good warning to watch out for what you buy secondhand sometimes.
Well, you do have to be a little bit careful. If I feel there's a presence on an item or it makes my hand hurt when I touch it, I usually just leave it in the store and don't buy it. But there's various things that you can do. You can wash it if it's washable, and you can bury it if you feel you need to. If you want to, make sure that there's no energy left from it because you want to start it off as if it's fresh and it's never been owned. Sometimes I like things that are old just because they've been used by others and it has their own energy, kind of energy that's there, that you can build on. I paint a lot of the statues that I buy. It individualizes them, makes them a unique item, and also as I'm painting them, I'm adding my energy to it. So the process of paying attention to something makes it yours and makes it different and that kind of thing. So partly it's going to depend on how sensitive you are to other forces, energies, or, energy from other people. Sometimes it can help you figure out where your own things that you need to work on are. Like, how do I shore up that particular defense? Apparently it's not working well because there's something in me that relates to that energy. So if I can work on my own energy, then I can experience the energy without letting it become a part of me. That makes sense. So yeah, there are various different ways. You can splash it with salt water that you've blessed and charged up, and it all depends on what you're using it for. Jamie says, I haven't seen that staff yet. It's so beautiful. What kind of orb is on the top, if you don't mind sharing, of course? It's a ball of amber. It's a reconstituted amber. The person told me that it wasn't, but I'm pretty sure that it is because there's a lot of insects in there, and it's pretty rare.
It'd be a lot more expensive.
It'd be a lot. Well, yeah, it was a trade that we were doing, but I think with this, the fact that it was the original amber and then it was melted and then stuff was added to it and then it hardened back up doesn't change its energetic signature as much as like laboratory stone kind of thing would, because it's still, it's a pine sap from a tree, basically, that's gotten hard. And amber has got electrical properties. You can rub it and make static electricity, stand things up, and so forth. So that's one of the reasons I have it, is its electrical properties. And the roundness is sort of feminine kind of attribute compared to a rod. And since I have him, he's my rod, so I figured I'd have a ball. Haha. So Violet says, is vinegar enough? Yes, you can use just plain old vinegar, but buy expensive vinegar. That's what they recommend. If you're going to make it for a special purpose, don't skimp on the vinegar. That doesn't mean you can't find it on sale. like grocery outlet that we have here has got some really nice wine vinegar that you can buy for a lot less than you would pay at a regular grocery store, but it's the same quality. So I don't go by how much it costs as to whether or not it's good or bad quality, just as a side to that. So Jamie Town says, I love the dark green color in your hair. It's my favorite you've tried so far. It looks natural on you somehow. Well, this is actually the same color, the only color I've used. The other color is like, silver, which is my natural hair color.
It's brighter this time, though.
Yeah, I did do a little bit of a touch-up on it last week. And Laura says, thoughts on Gerald Gardner or Sybil Leek then? Well, Sybil Leek was definitely a hereditary witch, and she was one of the first witches I became aware of. She was one of the first witches that I saw on TV. I read her book, Diary of a Witch. I thought it was way cool that she was willing to, go on national television and talk about being a witch. And, I can't remember what I learned from her book, except for the fact that she seemed like the real thing and she was a real witch. And it was sort of a lifestyle starting from the time she was a child. And, it's like everyone in her family learned this kind of thing. Gerald Gardner definitely started the whole Wicca kind of stuff, and he had his own ceremonial roots that he used in Wicca, which has got a lot of ceremonial kind of stuff in it. His books are certainly interesting to read. I think that I like his High Priestess better, Doreen Valiente, as far as her attitude towards all of it. But
and he had a couple of books, but he has such a poor writing style.
Yeah, his writing style is not the easiest to. But Doreen is a wonderful poet. And has some great books out there. So anything you can get by her, I would definitely highly recommend from the same time period. And she knew Gerald Gardner fairly well. They did have a parting of the ways at one point. So Emily says, I agree, I can't do Christian associations unless it's connecting it to other spiritual that match up across religions. My dad was a preacher. I practice a lot of typically Eastern things, I think. Yeah, any way to a way to sort of break that programming is a good thing in my opinion. Because that's what the video was about this week, was mental traps, and the way we're trained to think in the beginning and the thought processes that we absorb and without even knowing that they're there are the things that we need to find out we have and decide what to do with them. So Kelsey says, do you have any thoughts, experiences, or knowledge on fairy and human marriages courtships? Thank you in advance, and my apologies if this has already been asked. Not currently. Fairy and human marriages there's mythology about them, stories about them, like in Ireland and Scotland and places like that where they used to actually interact with humans on a more direct level, but nothing recent as far as I know. And I think that I think that there's a possibility that the realms used to be closer together energetically than they are now. And so that farther back in time, when energy hadn't been differentiated so much, we hadn't gone through all of the different processes, mental processes that changed our energy as physical beings, that there was more potential interaction. So I really don't have much to say about current stuff. I don't know that it's possible. If anyone actually manages to do that, that would be awesome to hear about. But I've had a few people ask me to make introductions to the Fae because they want to, get acquainted with them, and I can't help with that at all. I'm learning how to work with them a little bit, and they're their own being. They're not human. They're different, and it's I think projecting onto them all the different attributes and abilities and dangers and so forth that we've accumulated in mythology from Christianity and missionaries and superstition and so forth has made it more difficult for us to actually interact with them now, because there's a lot of baggage that we have. And when you're dealing with spirits, it's your attitude that matters the most as far as how they're going to respond to you. And they recommend, if you're going to go into the kingdom of an elemental, for example, and you're exploring, like, you know, the air kingdom, the water kingdom, the fire kingdom, the earth kingdom, when you enter into their realm, it's rude to make your own introduction. It's not okay to just go up there and say, hey, I want to meet you, come and talk to me. You have to wait for them to come to you. And I think that's true of the Fae as well, that you can be there and be open to receiving some kind of connection or contact with them, but it's up to them to decide whether or not you're interesting. And I'm not sure exactly what makes us interesting. They've always liked me, and I don't know why. I've always seen them since I was little, so, you know, they're sort of a part of my reality. You know, not everybody sees them, so I don't know. So that's the best I can do, I guess, off the cuff. Teresa says, I love making herbal sprays. Yes, they're fun, aren't they? Desideradum says, have you heard of any magical significance for rainbows? I've read about the goddess Iris, but that's about it. Well, I sure like them. They're pretty. And of course, you know, according to the Irish, the leprechaun leaves his gold at the end of the rainbow, but, you know, no one can ever find the end. So I don't know. I think it's just a wonderful thing that light can shatter into all these different colors and stuff, and us being able to see it, but I'm not sure about a magical significance. I know the new chakra system, the new age kind of chakra thing, uses the rainbow spectrum as the colors for the chakras, which is not historically accurate, but certainly easy to remember. And you can use the idea of a rainbow for color when you're doing color breathing, and different colors resonate in different vibrational rates and then can have different effects on your organs, your bones, your cells, and that kind of thing. So sometimes, you know, I'll like breathe in and visualize a rainbow, and then as I breathe out, I send it to wherever it wants to go, like let the colors go where they will and let the energy land where it wants. So certainly you can use it for that. I guess that's about all I have at the moment. Never know. Sometimes things come to me later. So Jamie says, when I was a teenager, the colors behind my eyes before I slept were so bright and constantly moving, eventually I would fall deeper in. Don't know how else to describe it, and I would fall asleep. Yeah, I mean, I see them moving, and sometimes they make a solid object. It's like there's a white blob of a specific shape, like in the middle, and it's not like, you know, everywhere. It's very interesting, and I think that is astral vision, clairvoyant vision, a combination of those things that's taking place when you see colors in your head. I had they tested me for epilepsy once because I had some odd brain things that were going on. And my description made the doctor think I might have epilepsy. So they hooked me up to one of those things with the flashing lights. And at one point, they turned into colors. And I was very happy about all the colors. The faster they flashed, the more different colors I could see, and remarking on them because, you know, I like them. And the technician was annoyed because he's had the test before and he never saw any colors. And there's no colors. It's just a white light. So he was just really grumpy. But yeah, I think we need to know more about this kind of stuff, you know, and share the information that we have, because that way, you know, we can get more of a handle on exactly what's going on and what steps or processes might be in play. And as we try to come up with a language to describe these senses that we have, but don't have a language that works well. Apparently, my throat is dry. Jaleesa says, thank you so much for your help. You're welcome. Teresa says, I want to start using the pine needles in my practice as well. I have so many trees around on my land. A pine tree told Ian that essential pine oil was a good thing to use for SADS, the seasonal affective disorder. You have to be careful if you're going to use it as an essential oil because it's extremely volatile, and you can't use it in anything plastic because it'll actually dissolve the plastic and put that into the oil. And you have to be careful, like how much.
Use small amounts.
Yeah, very small amounts. But the pine itself, just as like a wood, is often associated with fire, from what I understand. I haven't decided how I feel about that yet. I'm trying to decide what I want to make my fire wand out of, and pine was one of the ones I was thinking about. And yeah, and it's probably very protective just because of the way the needles are. So Jamie says the colors no are simpler and not as accurate, but the deeper in feeling still happens when I move into deeper states of meditation. Okay. The colors now are simpler and not as active, I think. But the deeper in feeling still happens when I move into deeper states of meditation. Oh, yes, he then corrected it. They're simpler. Okay. Thank you. So Violet says, ooh, I watched, I will rewatch. Okay. I hope the crazy color activity comes back. They liked me saying that you were my rod. Well, you know, it's sort of literal. Yes, and Jaleesa says, ha, the rod and the ball. Okay, so Michaela says, I really want to know if there's a greater purpose to astral project rather than just lucid dreaming. I still get important messages that way, but when I astral project, I find myself not knowing what to do. Well, you know, that's one of those things that can happen. Like, I can go anytime, any place, and find out anything, but I don't know what I want. I don't know. If you can find an astral temple, you can build an astral temple. If you're, astral projecting quite a bit, then making an astral temple would be something that you could do. And then you can go visit your astral temple and work in it and visit.
But it's also where all the beings of the zone girdling the earth are.
Right. You can see what you can do about meeting the beings that live in the earth zone. Jonathan says that, Michaela, it's easier to influence the physical world in astral space than in mental space. Dora Mifra, hello, sorry, a bit late. That's okay, you made it here on time, so yay. Catherine says, I've had some current encounters with Fae, if 2012 can be called current. Well, yeah, but you mean as in person kind of thing? I guess would be the question. Tori says, do you recommend any resources for learning more about ancestors or deities? Ancestors would be a personal thing. Finding out about your people's history, where your people are from, getting acquainted with that kind of thing. Deities, you read a lot of books. Read stories and mythologies and see what comes. Because there's so many of them out there, and as somebody who remembers them from other lifetimes, it's like I don't have like one pantheon that I'm kind of like tuned into. I tune into a bunch. Teresa says, thanks for your help. Oh, Tori says, I connected with an ancestral guide who used the devil card and tarot to represent themselves, which I'm still trying to understand why to choose that card. I was told they are a psychic, witchy ancestor. Well, the devil card can represent a lot of different things, not Satan. I mean, it's about all sorts of things. Stella says, I think the bright white light is the third eye portal, probably matching the position of the pineal gland. Maybe. That's not a bad idea. Destiny says, sometimes when I try to visualize energy, I usually see a bright white light from above, but it goes away when I try to focus on it. Is that normal, or do I need more practice?
It might depend on where your kundalini is at, too, because part of regular kundalini development is eventually you will get that communication and a light in your third eye. So
So it could be coming and going as it needs to start with. And yeah, so keep what you're doing, or stay with what you're doing. But sometimes it's like when you see something and it's sort of like, whoa, what's that? Then it like you change your state. It's like the state, mental state that you're in when it happens is often easily shifted. Like one of the times that I saw fairies with my eyes open, not on drugs, and in broad daylight with someone else who could see them too, because they were with me, I knew that the state I was in that moment of seeing them was hard to maintain. And so I did everything I could to just not move, not shift at all, and to just witness and see it. So sometimes that has something to do with it. It's like if you attempt to interact with something, you can change the relationship in your mind with it, and then suddenly it's not there like it was. So keep practicing, and when it happens, try not to get involved. Try to let it be and see if that helps. I'm not sure exactly how to say that, but so Elisa says, at Tori, I did the same thing, and she presented herself as 3 of Swords. That must be the ancestor thing. Michaela says, I may just have to start looking for a temple in that case. Well, you can make your own temple. You don't have to wait for a temple to appear. You can just go out there and start manufacturing your own. And you can use your imagination and build anything, because in the astral, thoughts become reality. So you can make it as elaborate and fancy and antique or ancient or whatever, or new or outdoors, or and once you make it, you can see some of your own progress, because it'll start to reflect what you're doing magically, and it'll actually put things in there that you didn't know were there, and you can go there and find them and go like, oh wow, where did that come from? And it can give you clues and ideas of things. And it's not a bad platform from which to interact with the spirit world. It gives you a safe zone, because it's like your space and nothing can get in unless you ask it to. And so that way you have kind of like a buffer between other types of travel, astral and mental travel. From there, then you have a place to go back to, and then from there you go back into your body, into physical reality. So it gives you kind of like an opportunity for that kind of thing. So Emily says, I agree on the pineal gland white light idea. I feel the same. Apparently the pineal gland actually has photoreceptors. Wow, interesting. Well, they're doing an experiment right now, actually, that we saw. Made us think about the astral vision the other day. We were watching an episode of Unexplained or whatever with William Shatner. You never know what you're going to get on that show. But they were talking about these children that they're doing experiments with, where they put on a mask kind of thing and check to make sure that there's absolutely no photons getting into their optic nerve at all. And then these kids are able to read like a book they've never seen. They're able to suddenly see without their eyes. So that was kind of interesting, and we thought it was probably astral vision that they were using. Whether the scientists know what that is or not is a whole different issue. So, Destiny says, okay, that makes sense, thank you. You're welcome. Kelsey says, yes, I meant older stories. Sorry, I wasn't clear. Though I do know spirit marriages are a thing. I too have had them in my life since I was little, which was why I was drawn to your channel. Yeah, I'm actually amazed at how many people are interested in the Fae. I think that that's a positive indication, just sort of like, the earthing thing happening and stuff like that, that people are starting to pay more attention to that kind of stuff. Chantel says, love your hair today. Thank you very much. Tori says, Julissa, possibly a guide to help you through the feeling that card brings up for you. Just a guess. I'd say read different books and interpretations on the devil card itself and what it represents in a reading. Just like the death card doesn't necessarily represent physical death, but transformation and change and stuff like that. So, Tori says, oh, go back. Ryder says, have you ever made a vision board? What exactly is their purpose, and how would someone go about making one? I've actually not made a vision board, I don't think. It's kind of like the idea is that you have something you want to manifest, and then you start, like, a book or what have you, and you get pictures out of things that are the things that you're looking to manifest and put them up, or a wish list, or what have you, to help you focus your energy. But if you don't follow that up with real world action, of course, then nothing will happen. Like if you want to have a car, you have to, go out and look for one, as it were, or a job, or what have you. They usually don't just fall into your lap. That's unusual. It can happen, but it's pretty rare. And I think it's just a way of focusing your energy. But I've not done one because that's just one of the techniques I've never used personally. So Tori says, I look like I'm straight out of a fairy tale today. Yay! I like being a fairy tale. I was dreaming about that last night. I was dreaming about a fairy and having a conversation with the fairy, and somebody was telling me, my mother was telling me that wasn't real. She was being a real bummer. Every time I said something, she tried to cut me down, which was interesting. And I saw this fairy flying, and she said they're not real. I says, I don't care. I'm going to believe in them anyway. Or something like that. It was kind of interesting. Never know what you're going to get in a dream. So Jaleesa says, at Tori, I used a pendulum and a spirit board to find out more. She says she goes by many names, but is some sort of fairy witch goddess. I definitely recommend using a board to find out more. Cool. And just remember, spirits can lie to you. Just as an aside. So, always call them on it if you think that they are. Emily says, the Gateway Project from the Monroe Institute may be something interesting for anyone who wants. It's the military's research on psychic abilities from their studies. Actually, they still have the videos or the tapes and things like that Monroe put together. And they have interesting effects if you listen to them and so forth. And you can still get those too. They help you get out of your body and that kind of thing. So yeah. I was going to meet Elizabeth Kubler-Ross at that point. Never did quite get together, but she and I were in communication with one another, and she was going to come to see me a long time ago when I was channeling. That was sort of a weird aside there, but the Monroe Institute and her were connected. She actually went to his institute and did one of his trips and had an interesting experience. Does everyone have a spirit guide or something of that matter, Taylor says? And the answer, I think, is yes. Whether it's an ancestor, whether it's a being that's decided to take on the role of guiding, whether it's an angelic form, or a god and a god or a goddess, not everybody is going to be aware of the fact that they have one. Okay, so one of the previous episodes of the Unexplained was a very clear example of someone having a spirit guide and not necessarily knowing or believing in them at all, but it saving their life. And it was very emotional, actually, because it was about 9/11. And I was surprised by how emotional I got because they showed the original footage when they were talking about this guy. He was one of only 4 people who survived above the 83rd floor, I think, of the second tower. And the way he survived, he was in the area where the second plane hit, but he didn't get seriously injured. Things were falling all over the place and everything was a mess. He was inspired to go out down the hall. He was going to take the first stairwell. There were 3 of them, A, B, and C. And he went to go to the first stairwell, and something told him not to take that one, and actually he felt a shove on his back that pushed him towards the last one, which was down the hall, which turned out to be the only stairwell that was open. And so he followed the instinct, and he went to the last stairwell, and ended up saving someone else's life in the process because he heard someone crying for help, and he saw this guy's hand sticking out of the rubble, and dug him out, and they went down the stairwell. And if that isn't an example of an incident of somebody having a spirit guide doing their best to try and save their life, and the thing is, there may have been other people who were also being pushed to do the same thing but didn't listen. Okay, Ian's going to go and come back. So it's a matter of being able to hear that. And I've seen that on other shows too, on shows where people haven't listened to a real clear voice in their head saying, jump out the window and run, don't come back. And then they thought, well, that's silly, that doesn't make sense. And then they end up getting kidnapped and horrible things happen to them. So I think that it's our responsibility to learn how to listen and decide what to listen to. Obviously, whatever we decide is what's going to happen to us when it comes down to it. So, so that's the longer version of the shorter answer, which is yes. Michaela says, yeah, I will just start getting up, then I would kind of just sit, sunbathe, and hear this distant singing, but that's how I meditate with my headphones in. So it's like my spirit self meditating. Michaela says, it was always more of an experience for me. Yeah. Ryder says, okay, thank you. Okay, you're welcome. Tori says, wow. Add to Lisa, I have a lot more to learn about using one, but I have been very interested in a pendulum as well. I wish I could use a pendulum, but I can't. I make them do things too quickly, and then I can't trust them. That's me, though. What would you think about boards? Spirit boards, Ouija boards, depends on your abilities. And if you're easily tricked and fooled by something, then they can have a lot of fun with you. And if you're not, then you're in control. A lot of people say you should, cast a circle around you. If you're sensible, it's probably not necessary, but there's no reason not to take the precaution. Well, last time I used the spirit board was on Samhain a number of years ago, and the spirit board said, "Why are you using this, lady?" And I thought, yeah, you're right, because I can hear everything you're saying, so I don't really need some board to interpret it and wait for the letters to catch up. So yeah, I've used them for years. But like everything else, you have to be sensible. I met a couple once who wouldn't do anything unless they checked with their spirit board first, like go to the grocery store. Nowadays that might make sense, but back then it didn't so much. It wasn't sensible. And so, like everything else, balance is the important thing. Tori says, is there a way to make sure a spirit is telling the truth? Well, if you know enough about what they should look like, that helps. Like, spirits from different planes present themselves with certain colors or vibrations or what have you, then that gives you an indication. If you've got a strong enough energy and you insist on the truth, they really can't lie very well, and it becomes very obvious. But like with anything else, like if you're meeting a total stranger and they tell you this wild, amazing tale, you can go, well, okay, is there anything here I can verify to see if it's true? I mean, the wilder the tale a spirit will tell, the more likely it is that they're pulling your leg and they think that it's funny. And you just have to use common sense. It's like they can't make you do anything you don't want to do, and you shouldn't do anything you don't want to do. And if the information they give you is bogus, then they were a liar, and you shouldn't listen to them anymore. And, it's like when we were kids and they say, just because so-and-so would jump off the bridge, does that mean you would too? Sort of like that. Just think it through, and you don't have to do anything even a non-lying spirit says. I mean, it's us that decides what we're going to do with the information that we get. So taking personal responsibility for yourself will avoid any of the traps that might happen from a spirit lying to you. But interesting, there was an experiment that they did. Was that experiment in Canada or in Britain? It's been a while since I read the information or saw it. Where I think it was a Canadian experiment where they created a spirit being they gave him a story and all this other stuff, and he actually manifested real things. So that's sort of a pretty clear indication of how powerful a thought form can be, and how group mind can affect reality when it comes to it. So it was sort of an interesting experiment that they did. And there was another one in England, or I'm getting them confused with each other. It's possible. Sometimes there's too many things running around in my head. But yeah, so staying grounded and being sensible is always good. And being willing to say no. Not right now. Let me wait and see. Just depends. So Jamie says, some believe we choose our parents before we were born, but why would someone choose to be born into a toxic family, for example? Do you have an opinion about this idea? So my opinion about this idea is that it is a way for people to be blamed for their own abuse and not hold the perpetrators responsible for it, and that it is a lie. On the other hand, if you're a spirit and you pick your parents, but you don't know for sure, when you're a spirit, you don't think about things the same way, I'm assuming. So you might think, oh yeah, they might be bad people, but I can handle that. But as an excuse, it's a really, it doesn't cut it. It doesn't matter whether you did choose your parents or not. If they were abusive, they're responsible for their own actions and their own karma that would be associated with that. And I know this from a personal level, not just because I was abused so severely when I was a child, but my first husband used the idea of that as an excuse to rape, and said that he was performing a karmic duty for these women by giving them this experience so that they could pay back a karmic debt that they had. And I think it's just a crock. The whole thing is just a crock. It's just some kind of an intellectualization to stupid point where it doesn't make sense. And you're right, no one deserves to be treated that way, and no one should ever be treated that way. And there is no justification for that kind of behavior. So that would be my response. So Luciano says, what's your think about the concept of ascended masters? There's an English gentleman called Bob Sanders who claims to channel the Great White Brotherhood and writes books on their behalf. Well, the name the Great White Brotherhood alone makes me suspicious and makes me think of Blavatsky. And yeah, maybe there's ascended masters, but are they really that ascended if they call themselves that in the first place? I don't know.
I believe in the possibility.
Yeah, there definitely seems to be the possibility that they could exist on one or two different planes of reality, in the astral plane or the mental plane or spirit plane or what have you. But but you know, if they're all about telling you what to do and how to act, and they call themselves the Great White Brotherhood, I'm thinking that they're probably not that great. And I guess if they're offended by that, they can come and tell me. It's like, and I'm waiting to see what happens next. But that makes me think of the whole Aryan thing. Teresa says, I make my pendulum move too. I say swing right and it does. A beautiful pendulum, and I can't use it. Yeah, I tell it to swing in a big circle, stop on a dime, go in a straight line, stop on a dime. It's just like, the physics don't work, but I can make it happen. So Jamie says, same with me about the pendulum. It does what I want it to, but what I want is not always the truth or the correct answer. But I guess it's still doing its job, sort of, revealing our inner leanings. Yeah. Well, I mean, it does show you that, you have the ability to control a pendulum if you want to. Divination is a tricky thing. That's all there is to it, no matter what form you're using. Because, yeah, the mind does some funny stuff to it. So Jaleesa says, can the Fae try to trick you? The other night I felt a strong, almost sensual presence behind me, and when I spoke to it and said to reveal itself, it disappeared, and heard some faint giggling. Well, it sounds like it was having some fun, at any rate. maybe you surprised it by being able to sense it. And yeah, they think we're funny, so there's any number of times I've had one who's made a funny face at me or whatever, and thought that they could maybe scare me, and then I started laughing and upset them greatly. But they were cute. I mean, what can you say? Anyway. Because remember, they're not people, they're something else. And think of a cat playing with a toy, It's like you put the string down and you start to do your crocheting or whatever. The cat sees that and thinks it's all for them, and then they start playing with it and stuff like that. It's not like it's trying to mess up your stuff. But hey, what did you think was going to happen? It was pretty, it was moving around, it was exciting, and I'm a cat, So you have to think about the nature of the beings that you're dealing with and what their nature is. You wouldn't invite a bear to come into your house and hang out. That would be not a good thing. And so, you don't want to invite something big and powerful and potentially dangerous and not housebroken to come in and have a sit down with you. You want to be respectful, and if you're going to encounter it, make sure you have an escape plan, or, don't get too close. Just think through the possibilities. That's what this is all about, really. All right, so Desideratum, our writer says that is a croc. Okay. I'm not sure what a croc is, or what was a croc. The picking your parents and being abused for it. Desideratum says, when you see a pendulum, you have to think about it as a conversation. So when you ask a question, just be open for an answer. It's rude to talk over someone answering you. Yeah, well, it works for some people, doesn't work for other people, and I'm okay with that. So I get my information elsewhere in different ways. Adeline says, I feel like she's my grandmother. Well, thank you. I hope you have a good grandmother, I should add. Violet says, you're so funny, Siofra. I laughed such a hearty laugh with you. The Great White Brotherhood chuckle. Or like my great aunt. I wish she was. Yes, well, I'm glad that you enjoy my sense of humor. I'm definitely direct. I can't help myself. So Desideratum says, speaking of thought forms, I've always wondered if fictional characters can actually become sentient beings from the energy of people enjoying the books or movies that they're in.
That's a good question.
That's a very good question, because I certainly have encountered what I expected were thought forms, like when Dr. Strange helped me heal a woman in a long-distance healing. I was, 1, surprised, 2, relieved, because he was both a doctor and a magician, and I needed one of each. And then, it's like, and it worked. The young girl was healed. She woke up without the ulcer. Everything was great. Then I made the mistake of telling the mother what I did, and then she never spoke to me again. That was the end of our relationship, which is often the case when you do real magic. People think they like the idea of it being real, and then when they see evidence that it actually works, then they're scared and they think you're going to do something nasty to them. Like on what evidence, I don't know.
Well,
but
archetypes, and
yeah.
That's the thing about these movies that I don't care for, the really horror movies and stuff, because they set up bad guy archetypes that are out there somewhere.
Yeah, and archetypes can be dangerous too, for sure. So the short answer is yes, they can. I don't know if they're quite sentient, but, like a larva thinks it's real. So they could become kind of like that in that, the more they're fed. And there are some religions that create their own gods. And so you can create a being from the way you work with your stuff, and, like a culture can create a deity if you know how, giving it a house and feeding it and and that kind of thing. So I'm sure that is a definite possibility. And that's one of the reasons why you have to be careful what you put in your own head, too, because then you can feed those things in yourself. It's complicated. I did once accidentally fall into a comic book world where the villains and the superheroes were working out storylines for their writers. That was kind of a surprise in the astral or mental plane or what have you. So, if thoughts are real and you're in a place where everything is thought, then thoughts are real, right? So you're going to see things in their raw state. That was like when the person was asking about how to tell if a spirit is lying, what they look like is one of the ways that you can tell what their nature is, like with thought forms. So, for example, when I had a friend, this was way back when, who was thinking hateful thoughts towards me, and I saw this creature thing climb out of her head, and as she was thinking it, and float down the stairs, and then stand in front of me, I knew what it was because of what it looked like. It looks like what it is. And I think that, if you're seeing things for what they are, then you can tell. And, I knew that it was hate. I mean, there's just no other way to describe what I saw. And I said to her, "You hate me, don't you?" And she laughed and said, "Yes, I do." And so they thoughts, when you're seeing them as a raw thought form, they have shape, color, texture, smell. All these things give you hints and clues as to what they are. And so if they're negative, their color is wrong. It's
they might be very pointy if they're angry.
Right. And if they're like mean, claws, and if they have bad intentions towards you. But the color is the main thing that gets me, is like, you can have green, and green can be like a rich emerald, verdant kind of wonderful color, or it can be this sicky kind of green that kind of looks like puke or something. And so if you see something that is that color, it's not a good thing. It's like, so look to what it looks like to you, and then what it feels like, in order to determine whether or not it's likely to be lying. And the better you are able to determine those things, the better able you will be to distinguish the differences. Experience helps. So let's see. Luciana says, "Violet, I did ask him about the name, and he insisted it was purely an indication of purity, but if they're so ascended, why wouldn't they recognize the problematic nature of the name?" The Great White Brotherhood, yeah. Maybe they mean white as in not the color, but in the vibration. Adeline says, "Laugh out loud. I meant I feel like I know you." Well, I'm glad. Tori says, "I've always been drawn to the Fae, but hear so many warnings about them. Your cat comparison helps to understand them just having a different nature." Well, yeah, because, they exist, they're there, and they are. Adeline says, "And should I be scared of the Fae?" Well, it depends on what kind of Fae they are, supposedly. But you should always be respectful of other life forms. So I don't think most of them have any ill intent towards us whatsoever. But cautious interaction is what I would recommend. And having good boundaries. It all comes down to good boundaries. If you don't have good boundaries and you just let anything come in that wants to have a, "Hey, what are you up to? Can I have a sit in and see what's going on in your body?" then you're going to have trouble. So, we live with a lot of different kinds of creatures that are out there that we can see. Rats in the attic, or living in your garden. Living in your garden seems like a better spot for them, right? So, they can have their space, you have your space. Make sure that you have good boundaries, and like, I have rules for cats when I have cats, and they know what they are. It's like they get out of hand, and I know how to talk to them. I'm a very good hisser and a growler, and I make my position quite clear, and they're like, "Oh, okay, sorry," So I don't know exactly how to say that, but that's the way it is. I don't think scared of them is necessarily the right approach. Gnomes is here, says, "My housemate says he sees a brownie fae that followed us from a local fairy forest. there's a tree out front. I leave jewelry and fruit by just to be nice. Yeah. And they like that kind of stuff. You know, it's like we feed the birds. We put birdseed out for the birds. We've got peanuts that we put out for the crows. You can put other things out for the spirits. You know, it's just like, how do you feel about transfiguration? What is transfiguration?
Talking
shape changing. Well, I know that
unless you're talking about the other aspect, like divine transfiguration.
Okay, we'll probably have to leave that for another show and ask that question again, and then define what you're asking, since we're on our 1 hour and 30 mark here. So, because I'm not sure exactly what you're asking at this point. Taylor says, I literally had a dream of a sick cat in my living room with green throw up. I felt bad, so I left it water in that spot. What do you think? Well, it sounds like it was a good instinct to leave it some water and let you know that you care, whatever it was, that it seemed to be sick. Intentions mean everything. It's like, they don't speak our language. They don't speak whatever language we speak, whether it's English or Spanish or German. It's a human language, and we barely understand each other. But when it comes to spirits, the words that we say make an imprint by what we mean by the words that they can probably feel and see. And so it's your attitude that matters the most, no matter what words you use. It's that thing. And we can use words to like focus our energy and our attention in a specific way. So that's what we use words for. But just remember, they get that. They get that heart thing, and the energetic thing that you're putting out more than anything else. So Jaleesa, how do you communicate with and interact with shadows properly? Yeah, always towards the end of the show. They get into all these different subjects. You guys need to come in earlier and ask. And so I don't really interact with shadow people in particular, and when I find them interacting with the living and causing them havoc, I banish them, absorb them into the ground, and sometimes I find human spirits under them and help those spirits to cross over so that there's no shell for them to use again, and other times they just sort of melt into the ground, and then sometimes they come back. So I'm not an expert on shadow people. Deseratum says the negative thought forms that look like goblins. Yeah, kind of pea soup green. Yes. Ugh. Don't like those at all. Writer says, I will ask next time. Thank you. It was to do with your own physical features changing when in meditation or channeling, and you can see spirit guides or other types of beings through yourself or another. Okay, good. Good to know. So, Teresa says, thank you, Siofra and Ian, for your time. Adeline says, where do you recommend getting things for witchcraft? Go outside. Find a stick you like. Pick up a rock that looks cool. Buy a cup that you like. Put some water in it. You don't need much for actual witchcraft. So, go to the Goodwill. Find a statue.
It's nice to use the things only for that, though. If you buy a cup, use it only for that purpose.
Yes, if you use it only for the purposes of magic, it has a lot more energy to it. Gnomes is here, says they are there all the time. That is why I asked. They're more curious and playful so far. All the icky colored gnome things. Yeah, I guess we'll see, because, my understanding of the color and yours might be different too. Thanks, Siofra, Jonathan. You're welcome. Amazon, Etsy, and eBay are all great for buying stuff. Tori says, thanks for sharing your wisdom and lovable personality. Writer says, thank you, another thought-provoking Sunday. You're welcome, and I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here. And I enjoy these interactions a lot. So keep me on my toes. Blessed be for all of you, and I hope you all have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.